I once fired a waitress because she was 5 minutes late. At the time, I believed I was teaching her a lesson about discipline. I was wrong. Back then, I believed that success was simple. If you worked harder than everyone else, you deserved more than everyone else. I built my company from nothing. I slept in my office. I missed birthdays. I missed funerals. I told myself sacrifice was strength. By 45, I was worth billions. People called me visionary, ruthless, efficient. I preferred the word accurate. Numbers did not lie. Performance did not lie. Results did not lie. People, however, lied all the time. Excuses, emotions, personal problems. I did not allow those inside my world. The restaurant chain was one of my side investments. I rarely visited locations. But that night I did. The place was busy, but profitable. And one employee was missing. She walked in 5 minutes late, still tying her apron, slightly out of breath. Her eyes looked tired. The manager whispered something about a hospital. I did not ask questions. 5 minutes late, I said calmly. You're done. She tried to speak. I raised my hand. In this company, I told her, discipline comes before excuses. She left without arguing. I forgot about her before dessert arrived. I thought that was the end of the story. It wasn't. I remember the way she stood in front of my table. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. She looked young. Maybe 22. 23. The kind of age where people still believe life will eventually be fair. The manager leaned toward me again. Her mother is in surgery, he whispered. She came straight from the hospital. I did not look at him. I looked at her. If you knew you would be late, I said, you should have called earlier. She swallowed. I did, sir. The line was busy. Excuses, I thought. There is always a reason. Traffic, weather, family, illness. But business does not slow down for personal tragedy. That was my philosophy. I built an empire by never allowing my emotions to interfere with decisions. When suppliers failed, I replaced them. When executives underperformed, I removed them. Efficient. No hesitation. Compassion, in my experience, was expensive. And I did not become a billionaire by paying emotional costs. You seem like a hard worker, I told her evenly. But rules exist for a reason. Her hands tightened around the small order pad she was holding. I really need this job, she said quietly. I remember that line clearly. Not because it moved me, but because it annoyed me. Everyone needs their job. Need does not create exceptions. If I make an exception for you, I replied, I must make it for everyone. The restaurant was silent around us. Forks paused in the air. Conversations slowed. She nodded once. Not in agreement. In understanding. That part unsettled me for a second. She understood I would not change my mind. Thank you for the opportunity, she said. Then she untied her apron and placed it on the counter. No shouting. No begging. No dramatic exit. Just quiet acceptance. I finished my dinner. I signed the termination papers. I returned to my penthouse that night convinced I had protected the culture of my company. Discipline over emotion. Consistency over sympathy. I slept well. At least I thought I did. 10 years passed. In a decade, I acquired 3 companies, expanded into Europe, and doubled my net worth. Success compounds faster than interest. But so does distance. My daughter, Emma, turned 16 that year. She had her mother's eyes and my stubborn silence. We did not argue much. We simply did not talk much. Her grades began to fall during her sophomore year. At first, I blamed distraction. Social media, teenage drama, lack of discipline. Patterns are easy to diagnose when you believe effort fixes everything. Then the school counselor called. Emma was not failing because she was lazy. She was anxious, withdrawn, struggling with confidence. The word therapy entered the conversation. I remember feeling irritated. In my world, anxiety was solved by action. Weakness was corrected by pressure. Growth came from discomfort. That was how I had survived. But Emma was not surviving. She was shrinking. Her English literature teacher requested a meeting one afternoon. "She's capable," the teacher wrote in an email. "She just doesn't believe she is." Belief. Such a fragile currency. I arrived at the school prepared to discuss strategy, tutoring, structure, performance tracking. The classroom door was slightly open. Inside, a calm female voice was speaking gently. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. "You only have to try again." I stepped in and saw her. Older, composed, confident. No apron, no fear in her eyes. Just quiet authority. She looked at me for a moment, and I realized she remembered me. She did not look surprised. That was the first thing that unsettled me. "Mr. Carter," she said calmly, "please come in." Her voice carried no resentment, no sarcasm, just professionalism. Emma sat at her desk, notebook open, eyes slightly red. She avoided looking at me. "We were discussing self-doubt," the teacher continued. "Emma tends to believe mistakes define her." Mistakes define her. The sentence echoed longer than it should have. I nodded. "She needs structure," I replied. "Consistency. High standards." The teacher smiled gently. Not mockingly. Not disagreeing. Just gently. "High standards are important," she said. "But so is room to fail safely." Room to fail. In my world, failure had consequences. That belief built my empire. But sitting there, in a classroom that smelled faintly of dry erase markers and old books, it sounded different. Emma excused herself to get water. For the first time, we were alone. She closed the classroom door. "I didn't expect to see you again," she said. "I didn't either," I admitted. Silence stretched between us. "You run this department well," I said, defaulting to business language. "The school speaks highly of you." "Thank you," she replied. Losing that job helped. The sentence landed quietly. I looked at her. "It forced me to finish my degree," she continued. "I was working too many hours back then. I thought I needed that job more than I needed anything else." She paused. "But sometimes losing something shows you what you should have been protecting." There was no accusation in her tone. No bitterness. That absence hurt more than anger would have. "I was harsh," I said finally. "You were consistent," she corrected softly. "Not cruel. Not wrong. Consistent." The word tightened something in my chest. Emma returned to the room. The conversation shifted back to study plans, tutoring schedules, confidence exercises. But I was no longer listening the same way. For the first time in years, I wondered whether consistency had cost me something I could not measure on a balance sheet, and whether my daughter was paying that price. That evening, I did something unusual. I went home early. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her homework. Normally, I would have reminded her about deadlines, about expectations. Instead, I sat down across from her. "Tell me what's difficult," I said. She looked confused, then cautious. "I don't want to disappoint you," she admitted. The sentence felt heavier than any boardroom loss I had ever experienced. Disappoint me. How many people had lived under that fear in my companies? How many had walked away carrying that weight? Over the next few weeks, I attended more school meetings. I listened more than I spoke. I noticed how her teacher corrected mistakes, firmly, but without humiliation. Failure was treated as information, not identity. One afternoon, I visited the restaurant chain headquarters. Policies, performance metrics, attendance rules, all perfectly structured, all perfectly cold. I did not make a public announcement. I did not deliver a speech about compassion. That would have been theatrical. Instead, I revised one policy. Emergency absences would no longer require approval in advance. No dramatic press release. No applause. Just a signature. Weeks later, I passed by Emma's classroom again. Through the glass window, I watched her raise her hand to answer a question. She hesitated. Then she spoke. Her teacher nodded. Not with praise. With encouragement. I once believed discipline built success. Now I understand something else. Consistency builds companies. But mercy builds people. And I am still learning the difference.